Can we do a mic check on mic check? Can you speak for me? Just speak where you are.
Hello, hello, hello. Testing.
We can hear that.
Physician, where's your volume controls here? Check. I can't hear you. Can you give me another shot?
Hello, testing. 1, 2, 3. Ladies and gentlemen,
You're fine. Go ahead.
hello, friends. 1, 2, 3. Testing.
Okay. Yeah, we're ready. Start. Yeah.
Second. Okay. शरणं मम श्रीकृष्ण शरणं मम श्रीकृष्ण शरणं मम जय श्रीकृष्ण शरणं मम श्रीकृष्ण शरणं मम श्रीकृष्ण शरणं मम श्रीकृष्ण शरणं मम जय श्रीकृष्ण शरणं मम श्रीकृष्ण शरणं मम श्रीकृष्ण शरणं मम श्रीकृष्ण शरणं शरणं मम जय श्रीकृष्ण शरणं मम श्रीकृष्ण शरणं मम श्रीकृष्ण शरणं मम श्रीकृष्ण शरणं मम जय श्रीकृष्ण शरणं मम श्रीकृष्ण शरणं मम श्रीकृष्ण शरणं मम श्रीकृष्ण शरणं मम जय श्रीकृष्ण शरणं मम श्रीकृष्ण शरणं मम श्रीकृष्ण शरणं मम श्रीकृष्ण शरणं मम जय श्री कृष्ण शरणं मम. Friends, we are gathered here to mourn the loss of our beloved Rajni Dave from amongst us. On a solemn occasion such as this, that we realize the immanence, the existence of Lord, we realize that God is a reality, that there is a superpower that controls the destiny of all living beings, including us humans. In Hinduism, God is defined as Brahman or Paramatma. Pushes us into sadness and grief. Sometimes that sadness and grief sounds eternal and unbearable. This is when we take refuge in our scriptures and learn that eternity is connected with only the soul, not the body, to which we are attached by bondage of our emotions. In second chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Sankhya Yoga, Lord Krishna says, Antavanta ime deha nityasyokta sharirinaha anashino prameyasya tasmad yudhyasva bharata. This is addressed to Arjuna. This is sloka number 18 in Sankhya Yoga. It literally translates like this: the soul or Atman is eternal, indestructible, imperishable, and immeasurable. The soul dwells in the body that is perishable and that comes to an end.
The soul Atman
The soul Atman
neither is born,
neither is born nor does it die.
it is eternal,
It is eternal, unborn,
everlasting.
everlasting, constant, and ancient.
It is not killed
It is not killed
when the body is.
when the body is slain.
So how do you define this
So, how do you define this Atman
soul?
or soul?
We say that this
We say
simple
that this
definition,
simple definition is we say that these hands are mine,
we don't say I am.
but we don't say I am hands.
We say these eyes are.
We say these eyes are
We
mine,
don't say
but
I
we
am eyes.
don't say I am eyes.
It is this
It
I that
is this I that is present every time
in every sentence
in every sentence.
is
It is the Atman. So, what happens to the soul when the body perishes? That is explained by Shloka number 22, again of chapter 2, Sankhya Yoga. It says, Vasansi jirnani yatha vihaya navani grunyati naroparani tatha sharirani vihaya jirnani anyani sanyati navani dehi. That is translated as, just as a person wearing garments, when the garments become old, worn out, takes them off and puts on the new ones. In the same way, soul casting off worn out bodies enters into the others which are new. This process is called reincarnation. That is Hindu belief. This Atman is further defined by Shloka
number 23,
3, which I think most of us very well know. It says, Nainam chindanti shastrani, Nainam dahati pavakah, Nachainam kledayantyapah, Na shoshayati marutah. That is, the soul cannot be cut by weapons, cannot be burnt by fire, cannot be wet by water, and cannot be affected by wind. The soul simply goes through the inevitable cycle of reincarnation.
and therefore Lord makes a statement in Shloka number 27. Jatasya hi dhruvo mrityu, dhruvam janma mrutasya cha, tasmad pariharyate natvam shochitum arhasi. That is, he is telling to Arjuna that death
Certain of that which is born. Anything that we say is born has to die at certain time. He says, Dhruvam janma mrutasya cha. He also says, birth is certain of that which is dead. The soul is eternal and therefore does not go through the cycle of reincarnation. It just merely passes from one body into the other body, which is inevitable. This is the knowledge that helps us stand through pain and agony of losing somebody we like. And therefore, Lord says in Shloka number 11, Ashochyanan vashochastvam pragnavadamscha bhasase gatasuna gatasuncha nanu shochanti panditaha. He says to Arjuna, O Arjuna, do not grieve over those who should not be grieved for. Why? Because Panditas, if you have this knowledge and understanding about the soul, Atman being indestructible, then you should know, and those people are called Panditas, wise men. These Panditas do not express sorrow over the dead, or they also do not show tremendous joy over the living. But as we all know, most of us are common human beings. Panditas, we are not. So whenever something like this happens, most of us are trying to strive to have this knowledge, but we do not really know all about it to be able to be rid of our grief. So what can we do? Collectively as a community, we help each other grow to accept the inevitable destiny of each of us human beings. By assisting each other through such occurrences and offering physical, mental, and spiritual support to the bereaved family through these agonizing times. As a first step towards this collective effort, let us all make a silent prayer to God to rest the soul of the deceased Rajni Bai in eternal peace. It is said that congregational prayers have the extra strength to help the family to bear the loss. I like you all to join in 2 minutes silent prayer. There is a saying in Sanskrit that says, Shivaste Santu Panthanaha. Here the word Shiv is translated as, Shiv means benevolent, Kalyankari. May your path be towards that which is Kalyankari, which is the Brahman. So you can say that, chant that in your mind, or otherwise just simply observe 2 minutes silence at this time. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Now, you heard this translation.
Arjuna ko हरि सुनाया वही आत्मा सच्चिदानंद में शिवोहम 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 शिवोहम.
That was my wife. Due to health reasons, she was not able to come here, but this is her contribution to explain the things that I just said from Gita in a musical form. So this is to give an understanding of what our religion has to offer in these situations. As you all are aware of, in Hinduism there are rituals every single event of our life. A boy takes birth, a person, a boy or a girl takes birth, and we celebrate that. Person grows, starts eating solid food, we celebrate that part. Becomes a little bit older, toddler, and does few other things, we celebrate that. We have 16 sanskaras that way, starting from birth time, which is called Jata Karma Sanskar. Then we have Annaprashan Sanskar, we have Namakaran Sanskar, means naming ceremony. We have number of ceremonies. At each ceremony, what we do is we pray God, God, you are the one who is omnipresent, omnipotent, and omniscient. You are the one who makes these things happen. We seek your blessings to make these things go through. We have all these sanskaras lasting all the way until the body perishes from this earth. And when the body perishes, it is considered that the soul of the person, deceased person, usually does not leave because of the attachment from the area of his beloved ones. So there is a ceremony that we do, what is called final rite ceremony or Antim Vidhi. And in that ceremony, we try to give Urdhvagami, means upward motion to that soul to go towards Lord's abode. So in order to do that, I like to call upon Shaili to come over here and perform that ritual with me. This part of the ceremony is very simple and very short. What we do is called Shat Pindi Vidhi. There are rice flour pindas made, 6 of them. They will be offered to the deceased as a symbol of sustenance, as that soul's travel towards the Lord's abode starts. Now, there is a slight situation here that I like to mention to you. In India, as you know, the body is taken from home of the deceased. So the ceremony has been set up as if when the body is taken out, the first pinda is placed right at the doorstep of the deceased home. Second, at the edge of the street. Third goes into what they call usually 4-way intersection in the town. Fourth one is at the edge of the town. Usually the crematories, what we call smashan, are located just outside the premises of the town. However, nowadays, as you probably know, because of population, sometimes they over encroach and they become part of the town itself. But basically that was the setup when these things are written long time ago, and we are trying to replicate and do things as well as we can, keeping in what we call Deshakalo Sankirtya, means according to Deshakal, according to where we are, what is appropriate, what is possible, we try to do that, and that is what we are going to do. So the fourth one is usually kept at the edge of the town, fifth one to the entrance to the crematory, and sixth one is given in the right hand of the deceased. Not, as you can understand very easily, this is not happening here. It's not possible. So for years, many of us have decided to do this, and each time all these pindas are taken then, and then they are taken up to the crematory anyway. So what we do is, we try to put them right here in the casket. Two will go near the feet, two will go near the head, on each side of the head, fifth one in the left hand, and sixth one in the right hand. And this is how we will do it. Before that, we do a symbolic Pinda Puja, as we call it. And before that, we also do what is called Sankalpa, means we say to God, what is it that we are going to do at this time. So, just hold it. This is called Sankalpa. I'm going to recite in Sanskrit. Om Atha Shri Brahmano Dvitiya Pararde Shri Shweta Varaha Kalpe Vaivasvata Manvantare Ashtavinshati Tame Kali Yuge Pratham Vibhage Amerika Khande Asmin Vartamane Chaitra Mase Shukla Pakshe Paunamasyam Tithau Sanischara Vasare Bharadwaj Gotrasya Rajnikant Sharmanah Pretasya Dahartham Utkrantyadi Pinda Pradhanam Aham Karishye. Put water in here. So I'm sure you understood part of it. We said according to Indian calendar, and we said that person belonging to Bharadwaj Gotra, Rajnikant Sharmana, for his Agni Sanskar Vidhi, means for cremation, we are doing the Pinda Pradhanam. So now we are going to start Pinda Pradhanam. First you hold again water in with you. Bharadwaj Gotrasya Rajnikant Sharmanah Pretasya Shava Nimittam Pindasthane Avnejanam Madattam Tavopatishtatam. Put water in there. This pind is called Shav Nimitta Pind. Now take this one flower and take all of this together along with one of this and hold in your hand until I finish this. Okay? Bharadwaj Gotrasya Rajnikant Sharmanah Pretasya Utkrantau Shava Nimittam Esha Pinda Madattas Tavopatishtatam. Take this whole dish and put it on the left side of the leg, on this side. Bring the dish back. We are going to repeat this 6 times, 5 more times, I mean. Take second pin. Water, little bit of head, one tulsi. This pind is called Pantha Pind. Bharadwaj Gotrasya Rajnikant Sharmanah Pretasya Pantha Nimittam Pindasthane Avnejanam Madattam Tavopatishtatam. Take one flower, same thing. वनतुलसीपत्र। भारद्वाज गोत्रस्य रजनीकांत शर्मणः प्रेतस्य उत्क्रान्तौ पान्थनिमित्तम् एष पिण्ड मदत्तस्तवोपतिष्ठताम्। Take this and put on right side of the there. भारद्वाज गोत्रस्य रजनीकांत शर्मणः प्रेतस्य खेचर निमित्तं पिण्डस्थाने अवनेजनं मदत्तं तवोपतिष्ठताम्। भारद्वाज गोत्रस्य रजनीकांत शर्मणः प्रेतस्य उत्क्रान्तौ खेचर निमित्तम् एष पिण्ड मदत्तस्तवोपतिष्ठताम्। Put on the left side of the head. भारद्वाज गोत्रस्य रजनीकांत शर्मणः प्रेतस्य भूतनिमित्तं पिण्डस्थाने अवनेजनं मदत्तं तवोपतिष्ठताम्। भारद्वाज गोत्रस्य रजनीकांत शर्मणः प्रेतस्य उत्क्रान्तौ भूतनिमित्तम् एष पिण्ड मदत्तस्तवोपतिष्ठताम्। On right side. भारद्वाज गोत्रस्य रजनीकांत शर्मणः प्रेतस्य वायुनिमित्तं पिण्डस्थाने अवनेजनं मदत्तं तवोपतिष्ठताम्। भारद्वाज गोत्रस्य रजनीकांत शर्मणः प्रेतस्य उत्क्रान्तौ वायुनिमित्तम् एष पिण्ड मदत्तस्तवोपतिष्ठताम्। Near left hand. भारद्वाज गोत्रस्य रजनीकांत शर्मणः प्रेतस्य साधक निमित्तं पिण्डस्थाने अवनेजनं मदत्तं तवोपतिष्ठताम्। भारद्वाज गोत्रस्य रजनीकांत शर्मणः प्रेतस्य उत्क्रान्तौ साधक निमित्तं एष पिण्ड मदत्तस्तवोपतिष्ठताम्। If you can put closer to right hand, if you're not in right hand. Okay? Yeah. this concludes the Shatpindu Vidhi. Now, one thing that we usually are not able to do here is if death was imminent in normal circumstances in India, the process was, and again nowadays that process is not being followed completely anyway. So what used to happen was that there would be a particular area of in the house designated where the body will be placed rather than on the bed or on the cot. And at that time, they used to provide this 4 coconuts and little bit of puja paraphernalia in anticipation of, and at that time I will be reciting what is called Yama Sukta. There are some slokas called Lord of Death, Yama. Yama is considered Lord of Death in Hindu system, and we are saying that the soul that is going to come, he is the one who carries that soul to the Lord's abode, and therefore we usually have few slokas recited at that time. So what you do is take some of these flowers, couple of it from here to, if you want, try to dip into these things a little bit. Then there is Ganga Jal here. Put Ganga Jal all around and a little bit in this mouth. Okay? And then put 4 coconuts in the 4 corners. Yeah. You can take that or this one, it doesn't matter. And you can do one at a time if you want to. You can take both of them together and then come for this one later. You put that there around. Then you do this, and then you put Ganga Jal, and then you put this one. Okay? So while you are doing it, you go to this side, several slokas. Yeah. Also, it is customary to give Ganga Jal in the mouth of the deceased. This was usually, as I say, this is done before the death in India. As I say, we replicate as many things as we possibly can here. That's the effort here. Om Tadevam Tadeva Shukrita Shramanta Adasa Prajasati Sarve Minsasha Vinesha Vidita Dusha Nainam Muddanam Divyam Chadhanam Chayapam Natasya Pratinasti Yasya Nayana Pradyasha Yanya Dharya Nityasha Namashan Samityasha Yasnam Yasna Nityasha Esho Padesho Vishonu Sarva Uzoha Jata Sapidara Samudara Yasmat Jantam Janayam Chamavatu Avaya Vishwani Vishwayo Antarishan Vikshayvaso Vimayi Vasmi Vishaya Desha Videna Kandasi Avasabam Pamami Abhyakshe Tamanasare Janami Vito Visvadi Vasmi Vishaya Desha Videna
Veda Sapitu Pitasata Paritya Bhutani Paritya Lokam Paritya Dev Sarva Pradisho Dishascha Paridyava Prithvi Sadya Hitva
Lokan Paridisha Pariswaha Ya Medham Deva Ganaha Pitaraschopasate Taya Mamadya Medhayagne Medhavinam Kuru Swaha Medham Me Varuno Dadati Medham Agni Prajapatihi. One in each corner. Medham Indrascha Vayuscha Medham Dada Dadatu Me Swaha Idam Me Brahmacha Kshatram Chobhe Shriyam Ashnutam Mayi Deva Dadatu Shriyam Uttamam Tasyai Te Swaha Iti Madhyandiniyam Samhitayam Dvantrishodhyayaha. At this point, we will be doing what is called Shanti Part, so that the soul receives the peace. That will be done, and after that we will stop for a few minutes to have some speeches, and at the end we will come back again to do what is called Agni Samskar Sankalpa and symbolic Agni Samskar started here. So that will be done a little bit later, but at this time we are going to do Shanti Part.
शन्नो भवद्वर्यमा शन्न इन्द्रो बृहस्पतिः शन्नो विष्णुरुक्रमः नमो ब्रह्मणे नमस्ते वायो त्वमेव सत्यं वदिष्यामि तन्माम् अवतु तद्वक्तारम् अवतु अवतु माम् अवतु वक्तारम् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः ॐ सर्वेषां स्वस्तिर्भवतु सर्वेषां शान्तिर्भवतु सर्वेषां पूर्णं भवतु सर्वेषां मङ्गलं भवतु सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः सर्वे सन्तु निरामयाः सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत् ॐ द्यौः शान्तिरन्तरिक्षं शान्तिः पृथिवी शान्तिरापः शान्तिरोषधयः शान्तिः वनस्पतयः शान्तिर्विश्वे देवाः शान्तिर्ब्रह्म शान्तिः सर्वं शान्तिः शान्तिरेव शान्तिः सामा शान्तिरेति ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः सुशान्तिर्भवतु ॐ भद्रं कर्णेभिः शृणुयाम देवाः भद्रं पश्येमाक्षभिर्यजत्राः स्थिरैरङ्गैः सुष्ठुवागुंसस्तनु दिव्यशेमहि देवहितं यदायुः स्वस्ति न इन्द्रो वृद्धश्रवाः स्वस्ति नः पूषा विश्ववेदाः स्वस्ति नस्तार्क्ष्यो अरिष्टनेमिति स्वस्ति नो बृहस्पतिर्ददातु ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः सुशान्तिर्भवतु ॐ असतो मा सद्गमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्युर्मा अमृतं गमय ॐ पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः सुशान्तिर्भवतु स्वस्ति प्रजाभ्यः परिपालयन्तां न्यायेन मार्गेण महिषाः गोब्राह्मणेभ्यः शुभमस्तु नित्यं लोकाः समस्ताः सुखिनो भवन्तु काले वर्षतु पर्जन्यः पृथिवी सस्यशालिनी देशोऽयं शोकरहितः सज्जनाः सन्तु निर्भयाः ॐ शान्ति 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 सुशान्तिर्भवतु.
This is a number of Shanti mantra we have compiled
together. When the COVID set in, several Swamijis had recommended that some shlokas from Saptashloki Durga and Shanti mantra should be done every day. Ela and I have been trying to do that every day for last 2.5 years. And it was very nice of Naveen to try to record us from our home so that we both could be presented here together. Thank you. At this time, we are going to pause for a little bit so that we can have other people coming in here, and then we will start speeches. So this concludes the ritualistic part of the this farewell. Thank you.
Namah Shivaya. Om 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 We are ready to start this session
where everyone will pay their homage to the deceased. Some of you know, most of you may not know, that I'm not just the priest here. I'm also a very close friend of Rajnibai Dave. So I open this to talk about what he meant to me, what he means to me. As much as we understand about soul and everything, still we are humans and we have feelings about each other, and that is what I'm here to express. I know Rajnibai since 1964, when I came to USA. I followed in his footsteps and went to Worcester Tech for my study towards master's degree in civil engineering. I met him and his first wife, Susmita Bhabhi, in 1964 or 65 in Hartford, Connecticut. And with his help, got my first job in combustion engineering upon my graduation in 1965. After starting my work, we lived in the same apartment complex. They were on the first floor, I was on third floor. And it became my routine to see and spend time almost every day with Rajnibai and Bhabhi. Rajnibai, whom I always called my older brother. When my fiancée Ila came from India for marriage in 1966, we had no relatives here. So, with Bhabhi, I set up the plan, and we had a wedding invitation prepared that read, Mr. and Mrs. Rajni Dave invites you to the wedding of Mahesh Dixit to Ila Bhatt. As you can see from the names, there was no relationship of family, and yet he was always my family. After that, we witnessed number of events that occurred in Rajnibhai's life. I may not be covering everything, as family might know, but since then we moved apart from each other. He moved from Hartford to some areas in central Jersey, near his place of work and so on. He had changed the job at that time. So after that, we were seeing occasionally, but I saw worsening health of Bhabhi, followed by Rajnibhai traveling alone on hijacked plane, TWA plane, and trying to help so many people at that time. Rajnibhai's own physical problems, followed by Susmita Bhabhi's death. Later on, marriage with Rajuben. Rajuben specifically asked me to become her brother, so I call her Rajuben rather than Bhabhi. Birth of Shaili, birth of Ushma, stillbirth, Rajuben's valve surgery, their trip to Turkey, later on coming to South Jersey for employment, being together at that time again. Later on, Rajnibhai's decision to move to Augusta for job, and later on Shaili's graduation. Before that, Rajuben's passing away, Shaili Navin's wedding, Shaili losing Sonam, birth of Shiv, worsening health of Rajnibhai. That's the culmination. We have been mostly silent but active partners in most of these events with them, Ila and I. Sometimes long distance with help of phones and so forth. But what really made me feel awed about was that most of his life was filled with miseries, except for very few glaring great moments. And yet, Rajnibhai always remained steadfast, nonchalant, most of the time, facing many adverse situations. Sometimes we try to help him, sometimes others try to help him as needed. But it always dawned on me to ask God, how can one person go through so many adversities as he had throughout his life? But then he remained more steadfast, and finally now he is at peace. That reminds me of two slokas from Bhagavad Gita that kind of, in my opinion, gives proper introduction of Rajnibhai. Chapter 3, sloka number 7. It says, Yasvindriyani manasa niyamya rabhaterjuna karmendriya karma yogam asakta sa vishishyate. It says, Lord Krishna says to Arjuna, the one who restraining the senses by the mind, unattached, directs his organs of actions to the path of work, excels in his accomplishment of his karma, and this self-control culminates in self-fulfillment. Didn't always happen to Rajnibhai, but many times I have seen him. He has weathered through those things much better than a typical average person will. Another sloka, very similar, from chapter 2, sloka number 56. Dukheshvanudvigna manaha, sukheshu vigataspruhaha, vitaraga bhayakrodhaha, sthitadhir muniruchyate. He whose mind is not perturbed by adversity, who remains steadfast in pain and pleasures, fear and anger is the muni of constant wisdom. That is the definition of Sthita Pragya, whose pragya means whose intellect is steady, who is able to see beyond things that are happening around him. I don't know how I'll fill that void in my life, but we pray God to accept Rajni Bhai's soul at his abode. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. To further this part, I like to introduce to you Rajni Bhai's son-in-law, Naveen. He will come and he will administer all the other speakers one by one and so forth. And we will see you at the end for Agni Sanskar Sankalp ceremony. Thank you.
Thank you, Mahesh Uncle. Mahesh Uncle has been a part of this family for some time. I only met him at our wedding, and everyone commented on such a fabulous job and his explanations and Yoganta's explanations, and we're so fortunate that he was able to join us to continue his wonderful administration of Hindu rituals for the family. So thank you so much.
The first speaker who I'd like to introduce you to is, if you live in Augusta, needs no introduction. Actually, if you live anywhere in Medicine, needs no introduction, is our dear friend, Vinayak Uncle, Dr. Vinayak Kamath, who has taken care of this family from the moment
they met, and whose parents and parents-in-law have been a huge part of our lives and Shaylee's lives from childhood. And to say a few words on behalf of the Kamath family, I welcome Dr. Kamath to join us.
I'm Vinayak Kamath, and my wife Sheila and I were family friends, and about 25 years back we got inducted into the Dave family and became family. So we've known Rajnikant Bhai and family for a long time. If you look at any of his pictures, any of his photographs, or like Mahesh Bhai said, you look at him, he is full of self-assurance, calm, peace. You never see him rushed. You never see him in a tizzy. He's never bothered. He's always in control. And so one day I asked him, what's your secret? You go through so much in life. And he says, well, I treat everyone like they are good people. And usually it works out well. If not, he said, you have to persevere, and you can run everyone into ground if you persist long enough. And the third thing he said was, keep all receipts. Those are the secrets to life. But he had a big heart, and everywhere he went, he brought out smiles, and he actually practiced what he preached. He treated everybody so well that whatever the situation was, it would turn into a very positive, heartwarming event. And there are so many times that I felt that, I needed to learn this from him, the art of opening people up to himself. And he had a wicked sense of humor. And that was, I think, part of his success. Even in small things, he relished life. Every moment he could get, he would relish life. My wife is a good cook and she would take meals to him time to time. One day, she had just left some lunch thing and I got there and, Rajni Bhai is like an engineer. Everything has to be in a defined area. The rice in the middle, vegetables on the side, roti on the top, dal at the bottom. And he kept looking. And I said, Raj Bhai, are you missing something? He says, I had a dream yesterday that I was eating chole. Now, Sheila had to limit the salt in his food, so she had to control what he ate. But, that was his way of saying that he needed chole. And he got it the next day. Lot of little things. He liked a little bit of alcohol time to time. So I would ask him, "Kaisa chal raha hai?" How's things going? If Shelly was in the room, he would do this. If Shelly was not in the room, he would go like this. And if he was just by himself and me, he said, I'd like to try this. So he turned every situation into something, that was fun and inviting. And everybody, was smiling at the end. And there are just so many times that, I learned so much from him. And every time it just seemed like the event would get convoluted into something and something and something, but end up very positive. He was a great photographer, so I can't remember the occasion, but he brought a big photograph of the Grand Canyon or something, framed. I think it was my father-in-law's birthday or something. And everything went well, but the frame kept coming apart. So I'm a surgeon, so I decided I was going to glue it, sew it. It didn't work. So Raj Bhai says, I'm going to take it back. So the day, and somebody had to hold it, otherwise it would just dismantle. So I had a light day, so I said, I'll take you to the frame shop. As it turned out, he had an eye appointment that morning. I think Bharti Ben had taken him and brought him back, and he had his eyes dilated. He was wearing these dark glasses, those square things that the eye doctor gives you. I don't know if you all remember Ram and Shyam, the Dilip Kumar movie from the 60s. And he looked like Dilip Kumar with those glasses and the hair coming down like that and standing in the driveway. So he holding the frame and with me driving, we went to the frame shop, very crowded, and the guy just snapped, what do you want? He said, well, this is not working. He says, I'm busy, find another thing and, I'll exchange it free. But that was not the problem. So I said, can you fix it? And he says, I'll try. And then, with his glasses and everything, Raj Bhai puts his hand on my forearm. He says, I'll handle it. He didn't say anything. So I just followed his lead. There was a chair in the front of the shop. He went and sat there. And he sat there. With a broken frame, he just sat there. So I said, I'm going to run to the hospital and come back. So I went to doctor's hospital, came back in half an hour. And everything was smiles. The frame was fixed, and everybody was clapping each other on his back. So I said, what happened? I asked the owner. He said, I don't know. He just sat there, and people were so nervous about him. He thought, he had an eyesight problem. They would go to him and say, are you okay? Can we take you to the bathroom? And one guy tried to fix the frame. The second guy came and helped him fix the frame. And third guy went to look for an extra frame, and the lady said, that's not the right shade. So pretty soon there was this clump of people at the entrance, and the shopkeeper got upset about it. So he came by and he got tangled into the thing. But by the time I got there, the frame had been fixed, the lady was carrying the picture in her hand, everybody was backslapping and smiling. So he just sat there, and it turned into such a happy situation. The other one was telling me, he liked to swim at the Lions Lake. And the water, when he first went there, the water was just too cold for him. Just happened my nurse's son was managing the swimming pool, and so he said, this water is cold. He says, no, that's what we have. So Rajni Bhai turns to him and says, and this is the young fellow telling me this later, he asked him, are you from Finland? And this guy has never left Columbia County. He said, no, I'm from Appling. He says, okay, so why do you ask? He says, only in Finland the people take bath in icy water. So he says, no, this is all we have. He says, nobody else protested. The guy said, Rajbhai said, well, maybe they are all from Finland, but I'm from here. We need to warm this thing up. So he says, okay, I'll see what I can do. His intent was to just wear him out, and his hope or expectation was that Rajbhai will leave. But Rajbhai unfolded a chair, sat down, and just sat down. So after a while, this young man started getting nervous. He was stumbling on things, dropping things. And he said, this is not working. So he went and saw the manager. He says, this guy is just wanting the temperature up by 4 degrees. So the guy looks through the blinds and says, he is not budging. So they said, we'll have to do something. So my nurse's son said, he looks like a Yoda, the wise man sitting there and just not being perturbed. So anyway, the manager said, he looks like trouble. He may write to the governor or something. So let's raise the temperature. And from that day on, everybody was happy. The temperature was up. But the manager was a little upset, and because it meant more money. But Rajni Bhai found out that he was from Louisiana and liked gumbo and okra. And so somehow, as a peace offering one day, he brought him bindi, sabji, okra sabji. From then on, they were like brothers. It was like... So he had a way of just ingratiating himself. Despite all his problems and things, he could compartmentalize, and I wish I could do that. Another thing about him was his attitude towards potholes, on the road. He constantly complained that Westlake has no potholes, my side of the street has potholes. So one time the county commissioner was visiting us, and we were standing, talking in our driveway, and Rajni Bhai rolls in, and I introduce him. And Rajni Bhai is so happy to see him. He says, I want to talk to you about potholes. I start talking to you about potholes. And he had this tremor thing. So he grabs hold of Doug's shoulder and says, potholes, they make my dentures come loose. And he was just going on and on and on. And I could see them walking down my driveway, and 10 minutes later they were still talking. And finally, they separated and each went his own way. The next week, Doug called me back. He says, about something else. And he says, that friend of yours that I met, the one who was worried about potholes? I said, yeah. Is he an engineer? I said, yeah, he's an engineer. He said, he gave me a 10-minute talk about different kinds of fillings for the potholes. And he says, tell him I'm working on it. So I said, okay. And then there was this pause. Don't tell him this, but my shoulder is still hurting. Way of just commanding the situation. But having said that, through all his problems, through all his, situations, he managed to stay unperturbed, as Mahesh Bhai said, above the fray. And we have a lot to learn from his life. And Shaili, Naveen, Sonam, Shiv made him so happy. Families, friends, that the end was peaceful. What more can we ask for?
We forgot to mention this earlier. Something that we all forget to do these days. So if you can turn your cell phones on silent, and for University at MCG, turn your pagers on vibrate. The CPT code is 012, and the upcoding team will take care of it from there. Our next speaker is Dharmanti. Dharmanti has been a friend of the family for just so long of a time, and I first met her when I first started going to puja at the temple, and she sent us some beautiful words when we were at the hospital in the last few days, and I can only imagine what wonderful words she has to share with us today.
Om Namah Shivaya. Since Rajni Bhai is from Saurashtra, and since he was a serious music lover, I'd like to start with the stotra. So, Saurashtra Deshe Vishade Tiramye Jyotirmayam Chandra Kalavatamsam Bhakti Pradhanaya Kripavateenam Tam Sovanatham Sharanam Prapadye Tam Sovanatham Sharanam Prapadye. Dear Shani and Naveen, thanks a lot for giving me this opportunity to pay tribute to my very dear friend, Rajni Bhai, and Shankar's very dear friend, Rajni Bhai. Let's just assume for a minute or two that and it's now taking me to the year 2003, exactly 20 years ago. I'm in a place that is most favorite to many of us gathered here, and of course to our dear Rajni Bhai, the Hindu Temple Society of Augusta. The brilliant flute recital by Pandit Shashank Subramaniam has just ended, and so has my word of thanks. An affable gentleman approaches me and introduces himself as a man mad about music and called Rajnikant Dave. He elaborates further that he is an avid listener, album collector, concert attender, and sponsor of classical music. It's needless to say, we became instant friends. I then invite Rajni Bhai and his equally affable wife Raju to come home so I could show off my music collection. But did I know at that point a much bigger, a much more impressive collection of old masters awaits me in their home? Of course not. Well, soon, we started sharing each other's cassettes and CDs, and thus began a mellifluous and marvelous friendship. As this musical friendship progressed, many talents of Rajni Bhai unfolded. much to the delight of my husband Shankar, Rajni Bhai was very tech savvy and was as passionate about audio video gadgets, state-of-the-art gadgets, as he was of music. CD was the latest technology back then. Rajni Bhai noticed what a technological dinosaur I was, sitting smugly with my archaic cassette collection. That's it. He had solutions for every gadget problem. He had the most useful gadget in his possession that transferred cassettes to CDs, and he thus made my entire music media contemporary. And I don't need to tell any of you what a laborious task it was, right? And guess what? He also printed the contents on the CDs meticulously in his beautiful handwriting. Many of you have seen his handwriting. Such a beautiful handwriting. And as years rolled by, our friendship grew stronger and stronger over idli sambar and music. Right? Idli with less, sambar with less salt, less tomato. Right? And Rajni Bhai started narrating his life's interesting experiences very lucidly in his own brand of humor, British style. Takes a little longer to understand, and in every minute detail. So much so that his mind-boggling memory used to amaze us. Every incident he could recollect, starting from 1950s, including the hijack. I knew very little about, coming from Tamil Nadu, I knew very little about Kerala port and the Gulf of Kutch, where Rajni Bhai hailed from, until I was schooled by him on that topic. He was very proud, and rightfully so, that his father was instrumental in the port's construction. So engineering runs in the family. And he has even made me listen to and enjoy listening to folk songs in Kutchi language, which was foreign to me until then. But I loved it. And, you know, by the same token, I made him listen to bhajans by Sri O.S. Arun in South Indian languages, and he enjoyed every bit of it. Such was his true love for music that transcended language. Speaking of language, do you know he studied Persian in school besides Gujarati and English? In lighter moments, Shankar and I used to tease him and ask him to speak a few words in Persian. He would say, "No, I forgot Persian a long time ago." And we told him, "No, anything you say is Persian to us. Don't worry." And in similar lighter moments, my husband Chunky, who used to be slightly jealous of Rajni Bhai for one reason, he used to ask him, "Now, what's the secret with your head full of black hair?" That was a very frequent question. So, you know, he was truly one of a kind, and he was very, very dear to Shankar and me. But I must admit, and I must apologize to him, at least today, that the damn COVID, you know, what do I say, just drove a wedge among everybody, you know. I kept in touch with him over phone, but I couldn't see him. But luckily, I got to see him twice in these past few months, and I consider myself very lucky for Rajni Bhai, you have a permanent place in our hearts, both Shankar and me, and will cherish the memories of our friendship with you always. We pray that you attain what you always wanted, to be with your Ishtadevata, the Supreme Lord Shiva. Om Namah Shivaya.
Thank you, Dharmanti. Our next speaker is a favorite of mine. It's Neil Bhai. Neil is Uncle's nephew. That's right. And he's just a wonderful soul and is going to be speaking for many of the bots today. And looking forward to hearing what you have to say.
Hello everyone, my name is Neil Bhatt. Rajnikant Dave was my Rajni Fua and a treasured member of our Bhatt family. Growing up in Bhuj, Gujarat in India, Rajni Fua was a playmate and a good friend of my father Madhu, my kaka Bharat, my kaka Jagdish, and my kaka Rashmikant. So he was an honorary member of our Bhatt family from a very early age. But when he married his childhood sweetheart, my Moti Foi, Susmita, he became an official member of our family. He and Moti Foi moved to the US, started a life together, and then they traveled the world. I remember as a young boy, their many trips to visit us in Ottawa, Canada, in their Lincoln Continental. He was very proud of that car, and for us, our American uncle with this incredible car always brings back such good memories. And we visited them many times in New Jersey and Connecticut. I remember one such trip to keep my younger brother and I from fighting. He sat me down with a magazine on engineering and architecture. And I will always be grateful to him for this, because it inspired in an 8-year-old boy a future career path. I have many memories of Rajni Fua, and most of them involve good food and lots of laughter. Unfortunately, we lost my Susmita Foi much too soon, but we were honored that Rajni Fua shared his new family of Raju Foi and Shaili with us, and eventually Naveen and Shiv. Although Shaili is now a Dita Kavi, rest assured she will always be part of our Bhatt family, my little sister. I hope you rest in peace, Rajni Fua. We send all our love, and you will always be in our hearts. Om Shanti.
Our next speaker is also Augusta royalty. Janak Uncle plays a monumental role with the Swaminarayan Temple and has a few words to say about Uncle and his journey through the Swaminarayan community.
Hello, everybody. Jai Swaminarayan, Jai Shri Krishna, Om Namo Shivaya. I came to know Rajni Bhai when he joined SRS. And then we used to meet at Hindu Temple Society at Mandir. And later on, when BAPS Swaminarayan Temple opened on Furis Ferry, he became the regular Sunday service member. Like he was born in Mundra and lived in Bhuj. I also grew up in Kutch, Gandhidham, Kutch, only 8 kilometers from Kandla and 35 kilometers from Bhuj. So we could relate each and every roads of Kutch, Bhuj and Gandhidham, and he can go and talk about that. Interestingly, in 2001 there was an earthquake in Bhuj, Kutch. And he and I sat in Mandir, Swaminarayan Mandir, and he talked. And surprisingly, he says, how should we rebuild all the buildings that are destroyed or damaged in earthquake? Especially the Swaminarayan Temple in Bhuj was damaged. So he was very concerned about that, and he said, this should be this, that should be that. And like he's civil engineer, I'm mechanical engineer, so I can understand his enthusiasm about rebuilding and participate in that one. But in short, there is a message from our saint and His Divine Holiness Mahant Swami Maharaj, who took the place of Pramukh Swami Maharaj. And here it is in Gujarati, and then I will summarize that in English. Param Snehi Sarvasri Navinbhai and Shailiben Tata Parivar. જય સ્વામિનારાયણ. અમને સમાચાર મળ્યા કે આપના સ્વજન પરમ ભગવદીય રજનીભાઈનો અક્ષરવાસ થયો છે. વિગત જાણીને અમને પણ આઘાત લાગ્યો છે, પરંતુ મક્કમ મનથી વાસ્તવિકતાનો સ્વીકાર કરવો જ રહ્યો. તેમની ચીર વિદાયથી એક ન પૂરાય તેવી ખોટ પડી છે. આપણા સંતો, મહાપુરુષો, ગ્રંથો આપણને અવારનવાર જુદા જુદા માધ્યમોથી એક સનાતન સંદેશ આપે છે કે આ સંસાર એક મેળો છે. સૌએ આ મેળામાંથી વિખૂટા પડવાનું છે અને અંતે પોતાનું સાચું નિવાસસ્થાન પરમાત્માનું ધામ મેળવવાનું છે. આ મનુષ્ય જીવનમાં આપણે સૌ એક જ રીતે એકત્રિત થયા છે. આ વાસ્તવિકતા જાણતા હોવા છતાં પરસ્પર પ્રેમ અને મમત્વના તાંતણે ગૂંથાઈ જવાથી આવા સ્વજનની વિદાય આપણને સૌને વસમી લાગે છે, તે સ્વાભાવિક છે. સદગતના આત્માને શાંતિ મળે, આપણને સૌને તેમના વિરહનું દુઃખ સહન કરવાની શક્તિ મળે અને તેમની સ્મૃતિમાં તેમના સદ્ગુણોને આપણા જીવનમાં આત્મસાત કરવા પ્રયત્નશીલ થઈએ, એ જ ભગવાન સ્વામિનારાયણના ચરણમાં તથા પ્રગટ ગુરુ હરિ મહંત સ્વામી મહારાજના ચરણોમાં પ્રાર્થના. Dear Navinji, Shaili and family, it was very sad to hear the news of death of Sri Rajni Bhai. It is a loss that cannot be felt, but we have to accept the reality. Our saints and scriptures give message that world is a festival, but we have to live it from one or other day. We have to reach our permanent place, which is Akshardham. We all know this reality, but because of affection and love, makes us sad when our loved one is departed from us. Like it is said in Bhagavad Gita, Jatasya hi dhruva mrityu. One who is born will die definitely. Let us remember the good virtues of departed soul and celebrate his death rather than mourning. Let us pray to Almighty God so that it gives strength to the family to withstand the loss and cherish the good memory. Augusta Swaminarayan Satsang Mandal and Mahant Swami Maharaj. Jai Swaminarayan.
I take actually just a special quick second here because it occurred to me
Now, not during the introduction.
of Uncle, Janak Uncle, to acknowledge something that he did over the years for us. So whenever Shayla's dad didn't seem well or wasn't showing at service, John Uncle tattletaled and called Shaylee in a good way, and was able to help us catch things that we weren't missing, that the community was able to help identify. And I just want to thank the community for taking such good care and helping us do our duty. The next speaker is not me, actually. I think this is 8 years. This is 8 years of marriage, and we are still working on our communication. So yesterday, before print deadline, I did not receive the note that, of course, our friend Preeti would be saying something. And she had to go back. She was with us all week, but she had to go back for Easter service tomorrow. But she was able to send me a recording, so bear with me to play Preeti's words, and it should be right here. It's going to rewind that.
His physical form has to leave us someday. But I like to think that one way Raj Uncle stays with us is through the lessons that he leaves behind. Both Uncle and Raju Auntie taught me that life can be deliciously small, where the day-to-day connections with your neighbors and your high school friends and the guys that you do business with can blossom into lifelong, forever relationships. I still remember the day sitting in his living room, listening to one of his life stories, when it dawned on me that my sisters will always be my home. And to this day, no matter how much time passes between phone calls, I know that when I pick up the call, that it'll be like no time has passed at all. But Uncle also taught me that life can be huge, an epic journey. When I step back and look at Uncle's life, it's impossible not to be respectful and be amazed by all of the lives he has touched, by his fierce loyalty, and just living a life to be proud of. So if I have to pinpoint one thing that I will miss the most, it's perspective. So many times I have felt that a single moment sitting in that lazy boy, listening to classical music or Jeopardy, and witnessing a tiny piece of Raj Uncle's life has taught me so much about why this journey can be so convoluted sometimes. Thank you, Uncle, for letting me be a part of it. Miss you.
Thank you, Preeti. Next speaker is me. I'm Naveen. That's how I like it. Good. Tyrant. These are just a handful of phrases that I'm going to miss. Rajnikant P. Dave. Raj P. Dave. He was very proud of his name. So proud that every dress shirt he had was monogrammed in his own custom logo. I'm Naveen Didakavi, son-in-law to Rajnikant P. Dave, Shaylee's dad. When I first met Raj P. Dave, I of course called him Uncle. Old habits die hard. Even though I addressed him as uncle, I respected him as a father, but. I totally treated him with kid gloves because he had a personality more like a grandfather. I remember the first time that I drove into his neighborhood, Forest Creek. Shaylee and I had only been dating a couple of months. I was in town for Valentine's Day in 2012, and it was on that visit that I was to meet her dad. Now, when you go to someone's house for the first time, you usually bring something. Well, what do you bring to a then 76-year-old man? My mom said I can absolutely not take over a bottle of alcohol. So I spent the day with Hajra, cutting fruits and making an edible arrangement. I brought it over, and he was a little surprised. I am pretty sure he was expecting alcohol. That evening, I learned just how good Uncle is at making sober conversation with a guy his daughter was seeing. Let's just say there was a lot of silence and a lot of Shaylee yelling in Gujarati, "Dad, you need to speak to him." He made me his famous dish, Kareela Nushak, bitter gourd, deliberately seasoned with a variety of liqueurs. It was actually quite good. And over the coming months, I got to know Uncle a bit better. And since I'd already given him my token first gift of a fruit design, Scotch was now welcomed with open arms and no stigma. In the following months, as I wore Shaylee down, I got to spend more time with Uncle, Bharti Auntie, and Jagdish Uncle. I learned that guacamole was an entree, not an accompaniment. That there's a secret hot sauce available on request in Augusta's Mexican restaurants. And that margaritas come in regular and make it strong. Near the end of 2012, I was ready to propose, but wanted to first make sure that I'd earned his blessing. Getting permission was easy, actually. Having him keep it a secret for 24 hours was extremely hard. But hats off to him because he kept his lips sealed. You see, his fear was gone. His fear was that he would fall madly in love with a disreputable mechanic. Instead, he was so excited that all of his computer questions would now be answered forever and ever, in sickness and in health. As we planned our wedding, we began traveling with Uncle. I got a lot of brownie points along that journey. Our first flight together, which is on the slideshow, was in economy comfort. The flight attendant approached him first and asked, "What would you like to drink?" He told her, "I'll have Sprite." That's how Uncle talked. Shaylee and I said, after a long day of traveling with Uncle, "We'll have a gin and tonic." When he saw that our order was taken with no questions asked by the flight attendant or no card machine presented, he asked, "It's free?" I nodded. Yes, it's free. We're in economy comfort. His hand shot up like it was the first day of school. Hold on a minute, hold on. I'll have a Scotch. Make it strong. After the wedding, Shaylee and I got tied up in getting moved in and getting settled into our first home together. We got so wrapped up with wedding planning and enjoying our wedding that we actually forgot to get married. That did not escape Uncle. Uncle said, "So, when are you guys going to go to court and get married?" You could not forget to dot your I's and cross your T's with Uncle. He was exceptionally meticulous and extremely organized. He kept detailed records and knew exactly what to say to help people help him. When we took him to Italy for his 80th birthday, we paid for his ticket with miles. We requested a wheelchair, but we didn't have any help that day. It's no big deal to me to handle a wheelchair, but on the Atlanta airport train, he almost fell out of the chair during a bump. I didn't know you're supposed to engage the brakes. He didn't fault me, but he was fine, and he was somehow able, after we got home, to call Delta and ask them to refund his entire 150,000 miles because they almost let a senior citizen fall down on the train. On the way back from Italy, Shaylee asked me to sit next to him. Since this was our second year of marriage, I felt that I now had somewhat of a duty to help her police him. We had eaten our hearts out in Italy and spared no bite of dessert or a sip of wine. So on the way back, Uncle and I were sitting together when the attendant offered us ice cream sundaes for dessert. I channeled my inner Shaylee and asked if he would be interested in sharing an ice cream with me. He nodded yes. Got the ice cream. I put it down in between our seats. You know, like how one does when they intend to share something with someone next to them. He picks up the ice cream and begins to enjoy it in his seat, on his own, by himself. 10 seconds later, when most of the ice cream is now gone, I increase my vocal volume and I say, I thought we were going to share the ice cream. Huh? Huh? Very convenient, Uncle. Very convenient. His hearing aids were apparently out of battery that day. Speaking of hearing aids, he had a trick up his sleeve for a while before we caught on. He would complain that his hearing aids weren't properly tuned, and he would go see Cheryl, the audiologist, for an adjustment. Then, of course, after an adjustment, you need to determine if there's an improvement in a real-world scenario. So for a little while there, before we caught on, there was a request. Shaylee, I think we should go see if the hearing aid adjustment is good. Let's go to P.F. Chang's and see if I can hear you better, because it is very loud there. I think we hit platinum status with P.F. Chang's that year. As the years went on, the pressure mounted. When are you going to make me a grandfather? This guy did not beat around the bush. I learned so many Gujarati phrases from him. Come on. Ketli var lage che? How long is it going to take? During our pregnancy with Sonam, Uncle was diagnosed with colon cancer. But because the cancer had caused the amount of iron in his blood to go down, we had to get his hemoglobin and iron levels up before surgery could be performed. I took him to many of those hematology infusions, and I learned quite clearly that he had a pass-fail grading system for nurses. Some days, the nurse would hear, good, or you are good. This is a pass. Some days, the nurse would hear, actually, the nurse wouldn't hear anything because he was actually very patient. But when the nurse stepped away, Naveen, his seatmate, he would turn to me and scowl and say, that nurse is useless. As we got him back on track, we had to institute new rules. Less drinking, less sodium, less P.F. Chang's. I bought him one of those Meyerly bartender stoppers, you know, the one that lets out exactly 1.5 fluid ounces at a time. I used it to show him what one drink of scotch actually looks like in a glass. Nah. I would let it slide. But when Shaylee put her foot down, he called her a tyrant. He said that his one scotch per day, with a generous interpretation of a reasonable pour, falls under the category of, that's how I like it. I think a few weeks later, when Shaylee brought both me and him tiny pieces of cake, he turned to me and said, "Now you know." He took it in stride, and he lived on his own. When COVID began, we went into major lockdown. I was finally able to earn his trust by promising him that I would not ration him like King George, Shaylee. I made sure that he stayed home, and I handled his groceries and other requests at Liquorland. Looking back on it now, our decision to keep our bubbles small turned out to be a blessing for our family. The amount of time together skyrocketed. Prior to COVID, Shaylee and I were hardly in town when she was not working. And like many other families with elderly parents, we did not go anywhere during COVID, except to each other's homes. As our son Shiv began to learn how to talk, the concept of Nanu's house, that's what Shiv calls him, changed. It started off as just a fun place Nanu lived in, to Shiv's very own kingdom, where the rules were that there were no rules. If we even inched towards discipline with Shiv, the immediate response was, "Go to Nanu's house! Go to Nanu's house!" It was cute because, in all honesty, Nanu's house had few, if any, rules. King George be damned. So when Shaylee and I recognized that, earlier, that we had a shot at our dating turning into something, we knew that in order to make our relationship work, I would need to relocate to Augusta so that we could incorporate her dad into our regular life. I signed up to move 2 hours away from my closest friends, my family, my favorite barbecue restaurants, to be with her and hers, and transformed everything into ours and ours. When I asked Uncle for Shaylee's hand, one of the things he said to me was that he did not want to be a burden to us. It's actually quite remarkable that he lived his wish. I honestly didn't expect that was going to be the case. In these past 10 years, he had 3 major hospitalizations, but for each and every situation, he worked hard in the hospital, at rehab, and returned to successful independent living. It's truly inspiring to see that he was able to achieve his dream of not being a burden and running an independent household till the very end. Last Friday, I took Uncle to go to the nephrology lab to get some work done, get some lab draws done. It was my first time one-on-one with him after he had come home from rehab. He worked hard to get into and out of the car. I encouraged him to use the skills that he learned from physical therapy, and I did not try to move things along by cheating. I saw how difficult life had become for him, despite his best efforts and hard work at rehab. I saw how frustrating it was for him just to go about his day. I told Shaylee that I was so incredibly angry that this is what his life had become since March 20th. I told her that the only thing that her dad had going for him was that his grandson and grandpuppy Laddu lived 5 minutes away. I told her that starting immediately, we were going to start to do Shiv's dinners at her dad's house so that we could increase how often Uncle got to see Shiv. That day, after we returned from the doctor's office, he asked me to make him a grilled cheese sandwich for lunch before I had to return to work. I was proud of him for working so hard on this journey to the appointment and back. I decided that I would forget about King George,
and spoiled him with plenty of
chips, and even some Girl Scout cookies. He smiled when he recognized that I had brought him just a little more than a grilled cheese sandwich over. The next evening, after a day-long visit from his brother and sister, I came over with Shiv, my parents, and a ton of pizzas. Shaylee was able to come over at a reasonable time after work. It's unusual these days. Uncle was in his master bathroom and had asked Shaylee to help him stand up. Shiv was right there playing with the door to the bathroom closet. Uncle then recognized that something was starting to happen to him. Shaylee called for me. While the event was going on, Shaylee and I hugged Uncle, Dad, Nanu. He knew he was in our embrace. He knew he was safe. He knew we knew what to do. Halo, hujauchu, nikkariye. Okay, I am going now. I am going home. We love you, Nanu. And finally, welcome his darling daughter, first daughter, Shaylee.
You are the best storyteller I know, but today it's my turn to be the storyteller. I don't think I can ever fill your shoes, but here goes my humble attempt. Good morning, family and friends who are family. We are gathered here today to celebrate the life of my father, Rajnikant P. Dave, or Raj, or Rajni, or Rajbhai, as he's lovingly called. And what an incredible life it was. Those of you who know me know that my dad and I are very close. Growing up as an only child, my parents were my friends. My dad had wanted to be a father for a long time. And as fate would have it, I entered his life the year he turned 47, in the middle of many changes in his professional life and in his health. While he wore many hats, the hat he embraced the most was being my dad. Dad would cover his head with a sari and play dress up with me, eventually teaching me how to make the most proper pleats in a sari. Amongst all kinds of life's challenges, maybe I was his escape, or maybe I was his hope. As an amateur photographer who started out with a box camera, my dad took every opportunity to pick up his film camera and document my life. I look back at these pictures today, being a mother myself and having my share of serious life challenges, and I see a father who, in his midlife, chose to start a family and embraced every part of being a dad with all his heart. At the foundation of our relationship was friendship. I believe this friendship was inspired by the relationship my dad had with his father. My grandfather, Prabhulal Dave, homeschooled my father until the age of 15. Dad learned how to multiply while playing catch with my grandfather. As the story goes, my grandfather would say a particular multiplication problem, and my dad had to yell the answer before he caught the ball. Dad learned to read and write on a chalkboard while going on geological excavations around the deserts of Kutch. My dad and his father had a deep bond, and this was one he passed down to me. The best friendships are the ones where there's no judgment, only the feeling of doing everything possible to support the other person and their vision. Whenever I came home with a bad grade, despite working hard, or didn't get into the top med school of my choice, My dad was always standing behind me, reminding me of his so-called failures. At an early age, Dad had decided he wanted to build a life in America. He wanted to be an engineer. In his first year of undergrad, he got a bit distracted by living in Bombay. He didn't make the grades he wanted, and he ended up having to take a drop and a transfer to another school in order to make his dream a reality. In telling me this story, Dad reminded me that the road to success is not always straight. Sometimes it's filled with bumps and unexpected turns, but with perseverance and determination, one can eventually reach the destination. Realizing that my dad was not perfect, and he was still able to make his dream come true, helped me persevere in realizing my own dream of becoming a physician. Along with perseverance in setting of all adversities came Dad's unique way of accepting the adversity. Recently, in 2018, Dad called me to tell me that on routine blood work, his hemoglobin was found to be very low. He was puzzled by this finding, as he felt fine. After the colonoscopy, we learned that Dad had a mass that looked likely to be cancer. Sitting in the recovery area after the colonoscopy with Naveen by my side, I gently shared the news about this mass. Dad looked up at me and he said, "Asu nau biladu nikru," which basically means, "What's this new cat that popped up?" It's like a saying. The saying was so funny I couldn't help but chuckle, and went on to reassure him that we would figure out the next steps one day at a time. As much as I tried to reassure Dad in those immediate moments after finding out the news of yet another major medical issue, Dad looked at me with determination and acceptance. He was going to do everything it took to get his health back, and he knew just the right people to lean on. With every major life challenge, there were the butts, pillars of strength cheering us on. I knew I could always get through to my dad if I told him Vinayak uncle or Bhau Mama thought a particular lifestyle change was recommended. My childhood was filled with visiting Dad's friends from all walks of life. Each visit was filled with delicious food cooked by my very talented aunties, lots of laughters, but always a story too. A true friend is one that can sense your pulse, he would tell me. On one trip to India, my dad lost his luggage. In the middle of the night, he landed in Bombay and found a way to call Kishore Kaka and Ramesh Kaka, his undergrad buddies. As Dad would narrate the story, he would always say, "And without missing a beat, Shaylee, these two friends jumped in the car and brought me some clothes and some cash." My mind would be blown away by the power of human connection. "Dad, one day I want to have friends like that when I grow up," I would say. And sure enough, as I stand here today, I have friends who can just sense my pulse from the sound of my voice. This is an incredibly humbling experience. Dad's dedication and pure love to his family, the Daves, the Bhatts, and the Kavis, has always been inspiring. Being the oldest of 7 and several years older than all his siblings, Dad didn't have the opportunity to spend long periods of time with his siblings while growing up. But in his later years, he worked side by side my uncle, Devin Kaka, for some 15 years at Foster Wheeler. In those years, the two of them became very close, and I cannot do justice to the colorful stories my uncle has of those times. When my parents and I moved to India for 5 years, we lived in the family home. During those summers, all 4 of my dad's sisters and their families would come to spend time with us. These were beautiful times. Dad shared a very special bond with his brothers-in-law, Madhu Mama, Bhau Mama, and Mahendra Mama especially. He showed to me that the bond of family extends beyond blood. I am grateful to have found that same bond in my Didakavi family, who all embraced Dad and his stories with open arms and so much love. Love is unconditional. This was another major pillar in my father's life. There is no better example of this than the love stories of his life. Dad married his childhood sweetheart, Susmita Dave, or Mitumami, as I lovingly called her. Their love story was the classic, old-school Bollywood story, the one where the hero and the heroine sit side by side and don't say a word, but the unsaid feelings are realized and understood by both. As fate would have it, Mitumami had a congenital heart condition, and after she came to this country and married my dad, the doctors had given her a shockingly short time to live. Dad would say that it was her passion for music and art that kept her mind occupied and allowed her to outlive any predictions the doctors made. Dad and Mitumami in those days seized the moment and traveled the world despite her health limitations. The stories are all just epic. And after Dad lost Mitumami in 1982, he went on to marry my mom, Raju. Their love story was equally epic, but the kind where the hero and the heroine are both talking at the same time, animated and entertaining. My mom only learned of her heart condition when she went for her physical required prior to coming to the US. She was heartbroken to learn that Dad would yet again have to go through doctors and treatments and appointments. As the story goes, when Mummy finally worked up the courage to share the results of the physical with my dad, Dad calmly said that they would navigate this journey together. Mom and Dad went on to have me and my sister, who unfortunately passed away due to sudden infant death syndrome at 1 month. Despite Mom's health condition, the three of us went on many trips, Yosemite, Jaipur, to name a few. Dad's love for photography would mean that we would see these places in the most unique of times, waiting in areas for the right kind of lighting with the camera on the tripod. Those times together were just heaven for me. And the last and most important lesson my dad passed down to me is the unique ability to keep loved ones alive long after they're gone. Dad's bond with his father, his grandmother, Mitumami, and so many other people that impacted his life lived on long after their deaths. He taught me that the conversation doesn't have to end with death. The relationship one shares with their loved ones doesn't have to end with death. My mom embraced this idea. She absolutely loved it. So both my parents would take time to share stories with me of loved ones I had never or barely got to meet. It was their way of sharing their worlds with me and allowing me to gain perspective of the different eras in which they grew up. It allowed me to have the good fortune of learning all three sides of my family, the Daves, the Kavis, and the Bhatts. And as fate would have it, it provided me with the tools to find ways to keep my mom alive for my husband, our Didakavi family, and especially for our son. The idea that we can celebrate the memories of the loved ones that have passed on before us has provided me with tools to share my sweet angel daughter, Sonam Leela Didakavi, with our son, Shiv. We have a little tradition in our house today. Every night, my son says goodnight to Ba, my mom, Sonamakka, our daughter, during his bedtime routine. On April 13th, we came home and realized we would now add Nanu, as Shiv calls Dad, to this routine. This routine will never replace your physical presence, Dad. But Naveen and I promise Shiv will know who you are the same way you shared all the important people in your life with me. I will always find a way to share your stories and the life lessons they come with in the subtle way that you shared the lesson part with me. Dad, you and Mummy have been my world for my entire life, but especially for the last 16 years since Mom passed away. I will miss the phone calls every 15 minutes with a new question. I will miss going out to eat. I will miss learning of all your new friends you've made in your everyday life. But I promise that this is not the end of our conversation. I know our relationship is for eternity, and I am comforted knowing that your love and strength will live on in my heart. I love you, Dad.
I'd like to invite Indrani Auntie.
Well, I'm the last person to say bid farewell to Rajni Bhai. Rajni Bhai, I have known him for a long time, and I think our friendship grew because he loved classical music, and which I'm a very, exponent of, an ardent lover of that. And till this day, I remember that when Shelley came first to learn music from me, she was in elementary school, I think, at that time. And then they had all moved to India. And after she came back, she again continued for some time. And I think I still remember the proudest moment in Rajni Bhai's life when Shelley played the Tanpura with Anushka Shankar in Atlanta. He would never stop telling me that, oh, Indrani, this is for you, that today Shelley is could play the Tanpura for Anushka Shankar. So I also felt very proud of you, Shelley. I know he'll be always in our hearts, though he's not physically here. So in respect towards him, I'll just sing a song. Basically, the song is in Hindi, and it means that while we depart from this world, asking the Lord to be with us at that time. So the basic meaning of the song is that, and it's in Hindi. Itna tu karna Swami, jab praan tan se nikle. Itna tu karna Swami, jab praan tan se nikle. Itna tu karna Swami, jab praan tan se nikle. Govind naam lete, jab praan tan se nikle. Shri Ganga ji ka tat ho, Yamuna ka vansivat ho. Shri Ganga ji ka tat ho, Yamuna ka vansivat ho. Mera saavara nikat ho, jab praan tan se nikle. पीतांबरी कसी हो, छवि मन में ये बसी हो. पीतांबरी कसी हो, छवि मन में ये बसी हो. होठों पे कुछ हंसी हो, जब प्राण तन से निकले. इतना तो करना स्वामी, जब प्राण तन से निकले. जाना, उस वक्त जल्दी आना, नहीं शाम भूल जाना, राधे को साथ लाना, जब प्राण तन से निकले, जब कंठ प्राण आए, कोई रोग ना सताए, जब कंठ प्राण आए, कोई रोग ना सताए, यम तरस ना दिखाए, जब प्राण तन से निकले। एक भक्त की है अर्जी, खुद गर्ज की है गर्जी, आगे तुम्हारी मर्जी, जब प्राण तन से निकले, इतना तो करना स्वामी, जब प्राण तन से निकले, गोविंद नाम लेते, जब प्राण तन से निकले, इतना तो करना स्वामी, जब प्राण तन से निकले। गुड बाय दावी जी, थैंक यू।
Wow. God gave Indrani Aunty the gift of angelic voices, and that was quite a gift that you gave us and Nanu as the gates of heaven open to welcome him. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. I'd like to invite Mahesh Uncle up again. But before I do so, I wanted to take a moment to thank my friend Sudarshan, who has been helping me on last minute when we worked together like mad to figure out how to get the countless people around the world an opportunity to share in this moment and say goodbye. So thank you, Sudarshan, for helping me with this and helping the world and Uncle's friends around the world say goodbye. Mahesh Uncle, I'm going to invite you up to help us conclude and help us understand what is next.
This now brings us to the last portion of the farewell. What we do in Hinduism is cremate the body, because we believe that once the soul leaves the body, body has no other importance. And this is why yesterday I was talking to somebody in Christian denomination, and the subject came up, and we were talking about what happens after a person dies. And to my surprise, he understood our philosophy, and he agreed with me that the soul leaves the body and soul is permanent, not the body. And he said, you are right. It doesn't matter whether you cremate, whether you bury, whether you do anything else. So in any case, this is just a sideline. But right now we are going to do Agni Samskar Sankalpa. After that, I'm sorry, first thing first. First, we are going to have pradakshina around this casket by Shaili and all the family members, Shaili, Naveen, as well as brothers and all the family members. At that time, you can also offer flowers if you want to. You may do that at the end, it doesn't matter really. These are the normal systems that we all do. So, and yeah, and Shaili will be also putting, if you have seen a funeral in India, especially cremation, before that a water jug has been carried and it is done. Now, as I said before, during the other part of the process that we did, we discussed the Satpindi Vidhi, we said that we cannot replicate exactly how we do in India because here the circumstances don't allow us. So we have a saying that says Desh Kalo Sankirtya. According to Desh Kal, according to where we are and what we can do, we are going to symbolically put the water just inside the casket to show what we do outside the casket in India, and then at the end we try to break that earthen pot. We don't have earthen pot here, but we are just going to simply do that. At that time, there is a recitation which is very important, and that is what I am going to do. And you keep doing that. Shaili, Naveen will definitely do 4 circles. Others, I leave it up to them. Whatever you feel like, you can follow them all the way, or you can take as many circles as you want and then sit down. So I'm going to simply keep praying with repetition of those shlokas which must be done at this time. Om apo hishtha mayo bhuvah sthana urje dadatana maheranaya chakshase yovah shivatamo rasa stasya bhajayate hanaha ushatiriva mataraha tasma arangamamavo यस्य क्षयाय जिन्वत आपो जनयथा चनः ओम आपो हिष्ठा मयो भुवः स्थान ऊर्जे दधातन महेरणाय चक्षसे यो वः शिवतमो रस तस्य वाजयते हनः उशतीरिव मातरः तस्मा अरङ्गमामवो यस्य क्षयाय जिन्वत आपो जनयथा चनः ओम आपो हिष्ठा मयो भुवः स्थान ऊर्जे दधातन महेरणाय चक्षसे यो वः शिवतमो रस तस्य वाजयते हनः उशतीरिव मातरः तस्मा अरङ्गमामवो यस्य क्षयाय जिन्वत आपो जनयथा चनः ओम आपो हिष्ठा मयो भुवः स्थान ऊर्जे दधातन महेरणाय चक्षसे यो वः शिवतमो रस तस्य वाजयते हनः उशतीरिव मातरः तस्मा अरङ्गमामवो यस्य क्षयाय जिन्वत आपो जनयथा चनः ओम आपो हिष्ठा मयो भुवः स्थान ऊर्जे दधातन महेरणाय चक्षसे यो वः शिवतमो रस तस्य वाजयते हनः उशतीरिव मातरः तस्मा अरङ्गमामवो यस्य क्षयाय जिन्वत आपो जनयथा चनः ओम आपो हिष्ठा मयो भुवः स्थान ऊर्जे दधातन महेरणाय चक्षसे यो वः शिवतमो रस तस्य वाजयते हनः उशतीरिव मातरः तस्मा अरङ्गमामवो यस्य क्षयाय जिन्वत आपो जनयथा चनः. All of you can offer flower petals also at this time.
They're exiting.
The rest of
The rest of the congregation exit after the altar. They exit.
Yeah. Now it is time for all of us, everyone who is sitting around, starting from the back row. People can come from both sides if you want, but basically the family members, Shaili and other family members will be standing, and you can meet them, you can offer the flowers. If you want, you can do pradakshina and you can continue. As we talked in the beginning, Lord Shiva is considered the dissolver or destroyer. So what we will do is I will recite the Mahimna Stotra, which is Shiva Stotra, at this time as you all come. But in order to make it orderly transition from the people who are sitting in the back rows, they can come up first, they can pick up the flowers, offer the flowers, and then go and meet the family, and then they can leave the premises. After that is over, we will do the Agni Samskar Sankalpa and then take the body for cremation. Harihi Om Mahimna Parante Parama Vidusho Yadya Satyasi Stutir Brahmadina Mahita Davasanna Svayira Athavachya Sarva Swamati Parinama Vatiguna Mama Pyesha Stotre Haramira Pavada Parikara Patita Panthanam Tavacha Mahima Vanmanasayo Ratadvyadutyayam Chavitamabhidakte Shrutirapi Satasya Stotavya Kativita Gunakasya Vishaya Pade Tvaruvachi Patatina Kasya Navacha Madhusphita Vacha Paramamamrutam Nirmitavata Stava Brahman Kimva Gopisura Guru Vismaya Padam Mama Twetam Vanim Gunakatana Punyena Bhavata Punamityarthesmin Puramatana Buddhir Vyavasita Tavaishwaryam Yartat Jagadudaya Raksha Pralaya Krut Trayi Vastu Vyastam Tisrusu Guna Bhinna Sutanusu Abhavyanam Varadaramaniya Maramanin Vihantum Vyakrosim Vidabhata Ihaike Jadadiya Kimiha Kim Kaya Sakhalu Kimupaya Stribhuvanam Kimadaro Data Sujati Kimupadana Iticha Atatveshwar Shrevyai Bhava Yanavatarasvasto Hutadiya Kutarkoyam Kamsum Mukharayati Mohaya Jagata Ajammano Loka Kimavayavamanto Pi Jagata Madhisthataram Kim Bhavavidhiranadratya Bhavati Anisho Vakuriyat Bhuvana Jananeka Parikaro Yato Mandasvam
ह्यमरवर संशेरत इमे त्रयी सांख्यं योग पशुपतिमतं वैष्णवमिति प्रभिन्ने प्रस्थाने परमिदमदपथ्यमिति च रुचीणां वैचित्र्यात् दजुगुटिलनानापथजुषां नृणामेको गम्यत् त्वमसि पयसा मर्णव इव महोक्ष खट्वाङ्गं परशुदधिनं भस्मपणिना कपालं चेति यत् तव वरदतन्त्रोपकरणं सुरास्तां तां वृद्धिं ददति तु भवद्भ्रूप्रणिहितं न हि स्वात्मा रामं विषयमृगतृष्णा भ्रमयति ध्रुवं कश्चित् सर्वं सकलमपरस्त्वध्रुवमिदं परो द्रव्याद्रव्ये जगति ददति व्यस्तविषये समस्तेऽप्येतस्मिन् पूर्वमथनतैर्विस्मित इव स्तुवञ्जिह्वे त्वां न खलु ननु दृष्टा मुखरता तवैश्वर्यं यत्ना यदुपरि विरञ्चि हरिरथ परिच्छेतुं याता वनलमनलस्कन्दवपुषा ततो भक्ति श्रद्धा वरगुरुगुणभ्यां गिरिशयत् स्वयं तस्थेताभ्यां तव किमनुवृत्तिर्न फलति अयत्नादापाद्य त्रिभुवनमवैरव्यतिकर दशास्यो यदुबाहु न भूतनकण्डूपरवशा शिरपद्मश्रेणी रचितचरणम्भोरुहबले स्थिरायास्त्वद्भक्ते त्रिपुरहरजागरोति जगतां क्रतौ सुप्ते जाग्रत् त्वमसि फलयोगे क्रतुमतं स्वकर्म प्रत्वस्तं फलति क्रूषाराधनमृते अतस्त्वां सम्प्रेक्ष्य क्रतुषु फलदानं प्रतिभुवं सुतौ श्रद्धां लब्ध्वा द्रुतपरिकर कर्मसु जन क्रियादक्षो दक्ष क्रतुपतिरधीशस्तनुभृतं रुचीनामात्वेज्यं शरणदसदस्यासुरगणा क्रतुभ्रंशस्त्वत्ता क्रतुफलविदानव्यसनिनौ ध्रुवं कर्तुं श्रद्धा विदुरमभिचाराय हिमखा प्रजानाथं नाथ प्रसवमधिकं स्वां दुहितरं गतं रोहितभूतां विरमयिषु भृस्यस्य वपुषा धनुष्पाणेर्यातं दिवमपि सकत्राकृतममुं प्रसन्तं तेऽद्यापि त्यजति न मृगो व्याधर्दस स्वलावण्याशंसा ऋतधनुषमवाय तृणवत् पुरपुष्टं दृष्ट्वा पुरमथनपुष्पायुधमपि यदि स्त्रीणं देवि यमनिरतदेहार्धघटना दवैति त्वामद्धा वतवरदमुग्धा युवतय श्मशाने श्वाक्रीडा स्मरहरति शाचा सहचरा चिताभस्मालेप परवमशनं दिक्पटधर जटाधारी कण्ठे भुजगपतिहारी पशुपति कटालीभूतेषु भजति जगदीशैकपदवीम्। नागेन्द्रहाराय त्रिलोचनाय भस्माङ्गरागाय महेश्वराय नित्याय शुद्धाय दिगंबराय तस्मै नकाराय नमः शिवाय मंदाकिनी सलिलचन्दनचर्चिताय नन्दीश्वर प्रणतनाथ महेश्वराय मन्दारपुष्पबहुपुष्पसुपूजिताय तस्मै मकाराय नमः शिवाय शिवाय गौरी वदनाब्जवृन्द सूर्याय दक्षाध्वरनाशकाय श्रीनीलकण्ठाय वृषध्वजाय तस्मै शिकाराय नमः शिवाय वसिष्ठकुम्भोद्भवगौतमाय मुनीन्द्रदेवार्चितशेखराय चन्द्रार्कवैश्वानरलोचनाय तस्मै वकाराय नमः शिवाय यक्षस्वरूपाय जटाधराय पिनाकहस्ताय सनातनाय दिव्याय देवाय दिगंबराय तस्मै यकाराय नमः शिवाय पंचाक्षरमिदं पुण्यं यः पठेत् शिवसन्निधौ शिवलोकमवाप्नोति शिवेन सह मोदते।
We're all together in this morning. We're all together. No more suffering for him. No more suffering. Yeah. You're such sweet,
Yeah. It's a good time, always, right? Yeah. Feeling from the pizza joint. I don't know.
We lost him, but we lost you so much.
You're just like this, like your, you know, your daughter. Sweet daughters. So like that girl to be herself, right?
It was fun. Made everybody smile.
Yeah, no, for sure. But like, you happen to be that girl. Sorry. Are you going to do that? Are you going and then like you're sort of I think we're gonna have to see them all go out together.
At this time, we will do Agni Samskar Sankalpa, that will be followed by symbolic Agni Dahan, means cremation rites. This is Sankalpa.
Somehow he planned all this. You know? I think so too. It's not coincidence. I did not eat the flower.
Yeah.
I did not.
It is blessed.
Om Mata
श्री ब्रह्मणो द्वितीय परार्धे श्री श्वेतवाराह कल्पे वैवस्वत मन्वन्तरे अष्टाविंशतितमे कलियुगे प्रथम विभागे अमेरिका खण्डे अस्मिन् वर्तमाने चैत्रमासे शुक्लपक्षे पौर्णमास्यां तिथौ शनिश्चरवासरे भारद्वाज गोत्रस्य रजनीकांत शर्मणः प्रेतस्य दाहार्थम् अग्निसंस्कार संकल्पम् अहं करिष्ये। As you can understand, we cannot light fire here. So we are going to use this. This is another method I have devised. I'm not trying to take pride into it, but I had a lot of times I had to do this at the time when there were no priests around, starting way back in 1960s. And we came up with this kind of device. What I do is, we usually call this Mukhagni, and Mukhagni, we are symbolically doing that by using these things, and I have put foil in there so that it will stop after a little bit, and then we'll take the body inside. So at that time I need to recite something, and I told Shaili what to do. Just put it near mouth, not put in mouth, just near mouth. And it is symbolism that we started this, and I need to recite this sloka at that time. Krutva sudushkaram karma janata vapya janata mrityu kala vasham gnatva naram panchatva magatam deha deha samagrutam lobha moha samagrutam vaheyam sarvagatrani divyan lokan sagacchatu Divyan lokan sagacchatu, Divyan lokan sagacchatu. Now at this time, whatever flowers you may have, and this project may have here.
make a metal cast out of his fingerprint. We'll rearrange the flowers. Yeah, we can end it like this, yeah.